Welcome to chemistry class with Anekwe Ejike. Of course, he is a chemistry teacher from Dennis Memorial Grammar School, Onitsha. We are going to be starting from the foundation of this particular subject called chemistry. All right, before we continue, if you are watching this particular video class in YouTube, do well to press the red button icon there in your screen, which is subscription button. Subscribe to this channel so that when I upload a new video, you will be notified of that. All right, we are going to be looking into what is called Introduction to Chemistry. We'll look into what the topic Introduction to Chemistry. We are going to know what chemistry is, the meaning of chemistry by the end of this particular video. We must have known the meaning of chemistry, the career prospects tied to chemistry when somebody studied chemistry, applications of chemistry, adverse effects of chemicals, scientific methods. So these are the things we want to look into in this particular video. Of course, is the introduction to this particular topic. So we want to look at this foundational aspect of chemistry, starting with what chemistry is. When you hear about chemistry, what does your mind tell you? Of course, chemistry is a branch of science that deals with what? The properties, compositions, the structure of substances, or we call it matter, because matter is what? Everything, anything that has mass and occupies space, which yourself and myself is also a matter. So chemistry studies what? The properties of any matter you see around you, the composition, what is being composed of, the structure of that particular matter, and the transformation that they undergoes. The transformation they undergo, and the energy that is released or absorbed during these whole processes. Now, any substance you see around you must have it must have one property or the other that gives it its unique property, composition, some things made up of that particular matter, the structure, it has structure, either physical structure or chemical component that make it up, and even it changes, it must have undergoing from one stage to another, because we are not God that is immortal, that is unchangeable. Human being, everything you see around you changes from one stage to another, and as they change, energy is either released or is being absorbed. So that's the whole study, is what chemistry is. That is what we mean by chemistry. So some of the chemical changes which matter undergoes include something like what? Lighting a matches. Matches ordinary to on your maybe gas, lighting a matches, cooking, burning firewood, making palm wine, roasting of nails, or even iron in your houses, rotting of leaves, and all of that. They are all chemical processes. Anything can say, even eating food and defecating, it's also a chemical process. All right, so chemical, in the summary of this now, so far that you can also define chemistry, you can just summarily define chemistry as a branch of science that deals with the study of matter, its properties, composition, and how they react to their external environment, or how they react to its environment, how they react to their environment. Simple. It gives you what chemistry is. So the physical properties of matter, the properties of matter, the composition of that matter, and their reactions is what chemistry looks into or deals with. So chemical changes are otherwise known as what? Chemical reactions. Whenever you hear about chemical changes, it means chemical reactions. And the knowledge of chemistry helps us to subject some matter to chemical processes, thereby producing some materials for our everyday use or day-to-day use. Some materials or such materials are like soap, detergent, hair cream, perfume, oil, margarine, and plastic, among many others. Now, the knowledge of chemistry now help us laying hold on one thing or the other, join them together, and then we'll use them for produce a useful product that we can use. Some of the things we use around us are chemical products. Everything around you, of course, has some chemical components. Even human being, everything in blood, even the oxygen, blood that is in your body, they have chemical components. So we can analyze them and give you their components in chemical form. All right. Once somebody studied chemistry, what are the prospects on it, career prospects? Are we just studying it just to know all this? Or are there hope for such a person? Of course, there are. There are several career prospects tied to chemistry. What we mean by that is, when we say career prospect, we mean the job opportunities that are available for someone or a student that studied chemistry or that have knowledge of chemistry. And they are what? So many of them. Teaching service, of course, I'm the one. I'm a teacher now. I'm teaching you. And it's because I studied chemistry. That is why I can do that. I can do that in secondary school, primary school also. You can teach. They teach in primary school. You can teach in secondary school. You can teach in polytechnic, higher institutions, and you can also work in the laboratory in whichever aspect you can do. Which I myself am also do a laboratory work in my school. All right. Next thing is health service, of course. Things that have to do with pharmaceutical, which is pharmacists, biochemists, chemists, and nutritionists, dieticians, doctors, and nurses. They cannot achieve that without the knowledge of chemistry. They cannot be any of this without chemistry. So another thing is food processing. Of course, when you have good knowledge of chemistry, you know that food processing involves good technologists. Involves food technologists and research chemists. So having good knowledge of chemistry as a research chemist, you can find yourself in food processing industries. All right, something like petroleum and or petrochemical industry. Of course, that is chemistry on itself. It involves application of the following people: chemists, here, research chemists, chemical engineers, and laboratory assistants. These people must have to have good knowledge of chemistry for them to become effective in this area of industry. And that one is extractive industry. Of course, you can work in that place, maybe as a mining engineer or as a geologist and as a chemist when you have good knowledge of chemistry. And the next one is manufacturing industry. Of course, chemistry finds its way in that area also, maybe as a research chemist and as a chemical engineer, and or when you have a wide variety of manufacturing industry, such as iron and steel works and cement factory. All these places, all these factories, chemistry has its way in those industries. So having good knowledge of chemistry, you can work in any of all these places. Manufacturing industry, you can also work there. All right, agric. Does chemistry also have its way in agric? Very, very well. So agricultural scientists, chemists, biochemists, physiologists engage in research to improve the quality and yield of crops and livestock and to advise farmers. So chemistry has also its way in agriculture. Having good knowledge of chemistry, you can do things that has to do with agriculture. And another thing is forestry. Of course, scientists also do what? They engage in research to preserve what? Preserve and improve forests and forestry products. So chemistry has several careers that have been career prospects are tied to it. And these are the things we have looked into. So studying chemistry as a beginner, you should know that you have a lot of hopes and opportunities in the society where you can work when you graduate. All right, what are the applications? What are the uses of chemistry? Of course, we use chemistry in the hospital. We use chemistry, good knowledge of chemistry, application of chemistry. We find it in the industry, in the hospital. Of course, some of the chemical research and technology which leads to production of medicine that we use today has to do with chemistry. So knowledge of chemistry helps in production of the drugs that we take, and every one of us fall sick in one time or the other. So without a knowledge of chemistry, manufacturing of those drugs that we do take and one laboratory medical apparatus or the other will be a difficult one. So next one is even military. Someone will say, how can chemistry, also good knowledge of chemistry, help someone in the military aspect of it? Of course, chemistry do. How? Those the weapons, military explosive that is being used is as a result of chemistry, good knowledge of chemistry. So military cannot effectively do without ammunitions. They cannot do without ammunition, without weapons. But it's chemistry that contributes to the discovery and description of the theoretical basis for the behavior of those chemical substances, such as the explosive or even the radioactive aspect of whichever is the good chemistry, good knowledge of chemistry that enables one to know the behavior of those chemicals that can combine together to give one explosion or the other. So chemistry still has its way in the military. We also, chemistry is being used in teaching, of course, as a teacher, as a lecturer, in polytechnic and university. When you study chemistry, you can teach in those places. And that uses of chemistry, application of chemistry is in where? Chemical and petrochemical industry, of course. When you have good knowledge of chemistry, or if you study chemistry, you can work in those places. So it's being used there. Next one is space science. Somebody will say also space. Of course, chemistry is not out of place in exploration. In our effort to gain more knowledge of other planets and out space around us, special rockets called space rockets are sent into space. These are made possible by science and technology. So agriculture, of course, we said it before, and we also use it in that area. All right. Does chemistry, in all its uses and application, does it have any side effect? Does it have adverse effects? Of course it does. It has plenty of it. Because of what? How are they? Or what are they? Number one is drug abuse. With the aid of chemistry, of course, we have been able to discover or produce several drugs that will be used for one thing or the other, but people abuse it. So usage of wrong usage of those drugs produced by the chemists or pharmaceutical industries are called drug abuse. Of course, abnormal use, the word abnormal use means abuse. Abuse means that it's being used wrongly. Some of those drugs are something like cocaine or morphine, which are being used as additive. They are not being advisable for somebody to use them. Of course, they are a good part of those things, but they are being abused by human beings. Of course, poisoning. Poisoning, this is where chemicals are used to poison the food we eat. Of course, you should know that some chemicals can poison your food and it will kill you, or it will cause one problem or the other. This happens when the chemicals used as additive, probably as preservative, are added more than required or expired in the foodstuff we eat. All right, instead of the food bringing health to our body, it will cause poison. So some of the chemicals we use, some of them, instead of helping us, it could be a poison to us if they have been over added, if the percentage is more than what is being required, or if the expiring date reaches and we still make use of them, it can cause poison to us. It's because of chemistry that such thing is happening, and that thing is corrosion. Corrosion of iron can also be called rusting. Of course, we do hear about rusting of iron and we see them around us. And it requires what? How does it form? Is the presence of water and oxygen in a particular iron, a metallic object found outside in the atmospheric air that causes it. Now, because of it, rusting can be regarded as a slow deterioration of iron to iron 3 oxide. This iron 3 oxide is permeable to both air and water and cannot protect the iron from further corrosion of iron. That thing that is happening is chemical process. It's oxidation reduction reaction that is taking place there. So corrosion of iron is also a chemical process. However, rusting can be prevented. It can be prevented in these 4 ways: application of protective coating, which we call galvanizing, electroplating, depends on the way it's being used. Now, application of sacrificial metal, alloying, and cathodic protection. These are the several ways in which it could be protected. And when we get to a topic that will deal specifically on this. We can talk more about that in electroplating of iron, maybe in electrolysis when we get to our SS2 topics. All right. Next thing is that even because of chemistry or chemical industries, pollution is everywhere. So adverse effect of chemistry is one of it is pollution. Chemical industry through the action of what production pollutes our environment as the smoke enters into the air and deaths of different kinds enter into the water, thereby polluting the entire environment. Specifically, chemicals waste from factories and oil refinery and radioactive waste from where nuclear plants pollutes our environment. So, of course, good things inside those good things, advantage. Anything that has advantages should also have some advantages. So, chemistry is very, very good, but it has some level of disadvantage. Something like oil spillage, exhaust from the motor vehicle, pesticides, fertilizers, acid rain have made our environment unclean. We should know that, and endanger plant and animals' life. Human health is also being threatened by environmental what? Pollution. So all these things are still adverse effect of chemistry. All right, that is the end of that aspect of it. But now, can we look at what we call scientific method in chemistry? Of course, that is the last objective in our, when we began, specific objective. What we want to look into now is scientific method. What the scientists do in their process of discovering a problem, formulating a guess, which is hypothesis, experimenting it, drawing out a conclusion, which is the result, and if it yields positive, they will now draw a conclusion and agree. So we have two charts before us. One is identification of problem, which is question. We call them research question and the research aspect of it. Then after that, you gather a data, which is the research. After you must have gathered some level of inquiry, you guess. Guess is what we call hypothesis. You guess something. It could be like this, it could be this. So you just guess. It's guessing that we call hypothesis. And after that hypothesis, you have guessed. Then you have to test it. Testing hypothesis is what we call experiments. And after that, definitely you are going to find something. If you find something, and if what you find, the new something you have find, it does not agree to what the hypothesis says, is going to be, you will redo it. If it's yes, of course, you will do it again to prove if it will give you the same thing. So we can also explain this way, that way. Research question, which is identify problem that you identified, you guess what actually is it, you carry out the experiment. At the end, what you see, the result, you draw either conclusion with it or not. If it is supported and if it's not supported. So if the guess you did before, hypothesis is supported or is not supported. All right, let's take a look at it in a better way. What we mean by scientific method is it is the method the scientists use to produce different materials that exist as a result of chemistry. We don't just produce things for producing sake. They don't just do it haphazardly. They do it with a particular process called scientific method. And how did they do it? Now, scientists use their senses, first of all, to observe what is happening around us. Now, from a given set of observation which they observe, they use certain pattern. And that pattern, this often leads to the problem which they try to solve. Because they observe something, they have observed, they gather the data about it, it becomes a problem. It becomes a problem, it becomes a research question that will bother them, and they will try to solve that particular case. Anything around it, it could be maybe making a phone calls, it may be washing plates. It's someone that thought it wise to think about how to produce plates and everything you see around you. So they put forward a reasonable explanation. That reasonable explanation is what we call it hypothesis. I said it before, guess. They are not yet really sure. They guess something and they carry out appropriate experiments to test that thing they guessed, that thing they thought of. And after that, they carefully record their observation and the result of their experiments. Now, if the experiment supports the hypothesis, they carry out further investigation. I've said this thing before. If it supports it, they will repeat the experiment again, and they discuss the hypothesis and the result with other scientists. Nobody has the monopoly of knowledge. What you have discussed, you share with your friends, other scientists in the field, so that the hypothesis can further be tested. They will also do the experiment in their own way, in their own environment, and see what it will come up. When the hypothesis has become tested and been found to be correct within the limits of available evidence, it becomes theory. That is how we see different theories we have in chemistry. It's not just one test. It's not just somebody don't wake up one day and say, this is the so many theories. So all the theories we have in chemistry undergo these processes, and at the end it becomes a theory. Now, a scientific law or principle is established only on this ground after the theory has been extensively tested and proven true without any exception. So if it has been proven, that theory has been proven by several times, extensively tested in several ways, and it proved the same thing, it becomes a scientific law. It becomes now a law or a principle. Now, if the experiment, the initial experiment that was done was negative, if the result did not concord to the guess, then the scientist goes back to his hypothesis, the initial guess that he has, and either modify it or he puts forward a new hypothesis. He will change his thinking, his observation, or he will modify what he thought of. So during this way of doing things, this way of studying a problem is what is called scientific method. Because it's not about closing eyes and opening eyes and say that God told you or anything. No, it's this scientific method is what this process of studying a problem and coming up with a solution and going back to it again, formulate another one, and it's your concur over and over again, is what we call scientific method. And it is the very foundation of all scientific discovery. So far, that is what we have said. We have talked about what chemistry is as a branch of science that deals with the study of matter, its properties, composition, and structure of those matters, and even the transformation they undergo. We have talked about what the knowledge of chemistry will help us to do, the career prospect that are tied in studying chemistry, and the importance of them, the adverse effect of them, and even the scientific method. Thank you, and still do well to look into this particular assignment. Of course, we have done all of them. Give 5 examples as an assignment now. 5 reasons why chemistry is important in your life, in your own particular life. Why is chemistry? 5 reasons why chemistry is important to your own life, and explain in details 2 of the reasons given above. Those reasons you say that chemistry is important. After listing them, just explain 2. Then number 3 is list 3 adverse effects of existence of chemistry in this world. Does it have any effect? Of course it does. I've talked about it and explained 2 of them, two of the adverse effects. Thank you for being part of this particular introduction to chemistry. Remember, for further discussion and inquiry, you can get to me through my WhatsApp line or email address. You can send me email through my email at christo116@gmail.com or through my phone line or WhatsApp line. And that is it. Remember, if you are watching this in YouTube and you have not subscribed to this channel, subscribe so that the next topic, when it's been uploaded, you will be notified. Thank you for being part of this particular class, and remain blessed.